Good morning and welcome to a new reading vlog. So the theme of this reading vlog is partly mythology and fairy tale retellings and partly just about chilling, relaxing and enjoying the colder months because it's December now. Things are starting to unwind for me in terms of work and deadlines, and I decided to schedule a readathon at the time that would be going on. So if you don't know, I scheduled this readathon called Legendathon, which is all about reading fairy tale and folktale and mythology retellings. The readathon will be over by the time you're seeing this vlog since I'm vlogging it as I go, but let me know if you did participate. I am really looking forward to taking off some of the myth and fairy tale retellings on my shelves because a few of them have been there for a while. I did a whole TBR sharing the embarrassing amount of myth and fairy tale retellings on my TBR shelf, but these are the ones I've sort of stacked up next to me with the intention of picking from this week. I don't know how much I will get read, but I'm hoping to read at least 3 of these, including the one that I didn't just share with you that I've already started, which is Rose Daughter by Robin McKinley. So this is the first book I'll be reading for the readathon. I picked it up last night, so I cheated. I started a little bit early, but Jill and I decided to chill out together and have a little bit of reading time as flatmates, and this was what I picked up, and I'm already 50 pages in because I love it. This book is so beautifully written, which makes sense because Robin McKinley is a beautiful writer, and it feels like I'm sitting in an enchanted glen being told a fairy tale by a wise witch. It's so immersive. I love it, and it's obviously a retelling of Beauty and the Beast. So that's what I'm starting off the readathon with. I've also got some fun Christmassy plans with friends and different gift exchanges and spending time with different people over the next week. So I'll vlog some of that as well. But yeah, it's all about just kind of unwinding and chilling out and enjoying some of my favourite genre. So hopefully you will enjoy coming along with me for that in this reading vlog, which is also sponsored by one of my favourite companies who are Serious Readers, and I'll be talking a little bit more about them later on in the video, so stay tuned for that. But I just wanted to give them a big massive thank you before I got into the crux of the reading. So without further ado, let's vlog, shall we? reading update time, and for anyone who's wondered why I'm so dressed up in all my like sparkly Christmas gear, is because Chris and I are going for a festive afternoon tea this afternoon at Tiger Lily in Edinburgh, which we booked a while ago, so that's going to be really, really nice. Yeah, I am about to head off to that, but I thought I would give you a little update on my reading because I finished my first book of the readathon, which was Rose Daughter by Robin McKinley, of course. And you might have seen a little clip which showed Jill and I both reading Robin McKinley books at the same time. So she was reading Beauty, which I'd previously read, and is also retelling Beauty and the Beast. Robin McKinley wrote 2 retellings over the years, a few years apart at least, and they are both like a little bit different, but it was interesting because having Jill read Beauty at the same time, we were comparing the 2 books a little bit, and there was some striking similarities, which I think were in large part the moments in the story which were very explicitly drawn from the original, that like almost quoted the original fairy tale or French work of literature. So that was kind of fun comparing them, since I have read Beauty, but it was years and years and years ago and I can't really remember. As much as I love Beauty and the Beast retellings, some of them do blend together a little bit, especially when they're quite traditional and stick to the original narrative. So yeah, I think though, based on what I remember of reading Beauty, I preferred this one because this one really took me away into the story. The writing is stunning. I've read a few other Robin McKinley books and it always is. She has a very lyrical fairy tale-esque style of writing. It feels very traditionally fantastical and I love that about it. So it was really nice returning to this. It really reminded me of how much I love that writing style and got me excited to read more by Robin McKinley and other authors like her. I feel like she's in the same sort of category as Patricia McKillip and Juliet Marillier, and I think it may have influenced what I want to pick up next, although I'm kind of torn between 2, so I'll show you them next. And I really, really enjoyed it. It was a 5-star read. It was just so beautifully written, really, really detailed. Slow paced but very absorbing, and you just kept turning the pages, so I adored this. I just think it's exactly what I wanted it to be, and it like fully delivered. So really glad that this readathon finally got me to pick it up, since it's been on my shelf for a little while now, and I think partly because I'd read Robin McKinley's other Beauty and the Beast retelling, I wasn't as inclined to like pick it up over other books, but that would have been a mistake. Although I'd be interested if any of you have read both of those books and read them closer together so that you could remember them in more detail and how different or how similar they were. I think in large parts mainly like the ending bit that's like the big difference from what I remember. But I'm not entirely sure, so let me know if you've read both of them and can remember what was different or what was similar about them. I then do plan on reading more, obviously, for the readathon after I've completed my Christmas celebrations, and I have my stack of books here, but I think the 2 books I'm picking between next are this book, which is YA, and this book, which is adult. We have Isolde, Queen of the Western Isles by Rosalind Miles, which is a retelling of the fairy tale, the folk tale legend of Tristan and Isolde, which is Celtic and British, and The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea by Ashi Oh, which is a retelling of a Korean folktale. So I kind of feel like I want to read this next because, one, it's shorter even though it's in hardback, so it's harder to tell. It's about 300 pages. It's also YA, so it should be quicker to read, and it means I'm reading a folktale legend retelling from another continent than Beauty and the Beast, which would be nice to vary up a little bit. But then I think I will read this after. And tomorrow in particular is Jill and I's big like flatmate celebratory Christmas day. Like, we used to always meet up in Blackwell's in Edinburgh and exchange our Christmas presents every single year, but this is the first year we've lived together, so we've changed the plan up slightly. We're still going to Blackwell's for tradition's sake, so I'll show you any books I buy while I'm there, but then we're coming home to basically sit, read, drink Christmas cocktails, and fully involve ourselves in the readathon. I'm also hosting reading sprints, which you may or may not have caught and been involved in yourself, so I'm hoping to get a lot of reading done tomorrow in particular. On the topic of buying books though, there was actually a book I wanted to show you. Now, I didn't buy this because it's a proof, but I was sent it by the publishers, and it is a ARC or Advanced Reader's copy of Atalanta by Jennifer Sain. It's in this lovely slipcase, which I'll just take off, and I am so excited about this. I love the myth of Atalanta. I love Atalanta as a mythical character. I think her story and her characterization are so interesting, and I'm so pleased to see more authors retelling that narrative, because there's not a ton of retellings of Atalanta out there. It was actually one of the stories I was the most like passionate about making sure I included in my own children's collection of Greek myths, which came out in 2020, because Atalanta's fantastic and she deserves all the sort of like attention and more people to know about her. So I'm very, very excited that Jennifer Saint has written a retelling of Atalanta, which comes out next year. It was in my most anticipated releases video. Yeah, it comes out on the 13th of April in the UK at least, and I will definitely be reading it before then, although I don't know if I'll be reading it this week because I do already have all my books stacked out. But since it's a retelling, it felt very appropriate it would come at the same time as this readathon, and I could share it with you because I'm so excited. So that's pretty much my update, but I will check back in with you later when I've done a little bit more reading. So yeah, until then, happy reading. So I stayed at Chris's last night, which means I can actually meet Jill in Blackwell's at like 10 AM when it opens, which is very like traditional for us. Even though we live together, we're still meeting in Blackwell's for Christmas, so that's nice. But I will see you when I'm there and share any books I buy with you. There's something about being in town, in Edinburgh, first thing in the morning that always just makes me feel like I'm going to work. I guess like 6 years of getting up to go and work in retail at 9 AM in the same place just really ingrained themselves in like your physical memory. I could be going off to Radley now to sell some handbags, but the store's not actually there anymore. So instead I'm going to buy some books. Yeah, so I'm actually just participating in reading sprints that I'm running on my channel, and I thought I would do a quick little update on my reading while I was here. So the dust jacket is off right now, but this is The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea, which is inspired by Korean folklore and mythology. It's not like a straightforward retelling of one specific story, although it is like heavily inspired by the story of Simcheong, which is about a woman who jumps into the sea to cure her father of blindness, to like sacrifice herself, and because of her like sacrifice she is brought back to life. And it's quite different from that, but it draws on that and those characters. but it's also like just combining like other little like elements whilst creating its own narrative and story. It's about a young girl, 16-year-old girl, who basically sacrifices herself to the sea in order to save her brother from being killed by the sea god, and she sacrifices herself as the sea god's bride, because I can't remember if it's every year, but like every year, every few years, the people of her village have to sacrifice a girl as the sea god's bride, in the hopes that one of them will be his true bride, and then he will stop like causing these terrifying, horrifying storms that kill people and destroy the land around them. And she decides to sacrifice herself a little bit like Jill actually described Katniss in Hunger Games. She, you know, volunteered. And it's very, very interesting because there's some real parallels in this story with the Studio Ghibli film Spirited Away, largely because it's set in like this spirit realm, a little bit like Spirited Away, and because our protagonist ends up disguising herself as a spirit and getting a job as a member of a household staff, a little bit like in Spirited Away. Obviously, not entirely a unique plot point to Spirited Away, but the specific setting of the spirit world and that scenario feels very reminiscent, and I'd actually seen it compared to Spirited Away online, so that now makes sense to me as to why that is a comparison I'm seeing, and I'm enjoying it. It's very, very fast paced. It feels like it's on like the younger end of YA, and it's like very like quick, and because of that I'm also reading it quite quickly. I'm 55 pages in and there's about 300 pages, so I'm hoping I'll get through it very quickly, but it feels like quite a fast-paced, like younger work of literature, and I would love if it was a little bit slower and a little bit more adult, because generally speaking I am finding I'm less drawn to YA fantasy these days, especially like younger YA fantasy, because of the pacing. It's just not as much what I enjoy, but I really love the world building, and I'm really enjoying the like setting and the imagery and everything like that. So it feels like it is perfect for the age range it's aimed at, and I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to happen. So yeah, I thought I'd just give you that little update, and now I'm gonna crack on with my reading, and I'll maybe see if Jill will make an appearance later in the vlog to tell you about what she's been reading. She's just grinning in the corner over there. So I'll see you then. It's time for a reading break in order to talk about the very, very wonderful sponsor of today's video, who are Serious Readers. Meet my co-host here, the Serious Reader Light. So you may have heard me talk about Serious Readers in a previous vlog, but I'm always happy to chat a little bit more about them because they have honestly changed my life over the past few months. They have become a staple part of my reading and work routine, to be perfectly honest. So Serious Readers specialise in these lights which use something called daylight wavelength technology, which as a scientist I don't fully understand, but I am able to enjoy the benefits of, because these lights are incredible. The one I have here is super customizable. It is adjustable in terms of height. You can adjust both the like spotlight, so like the space which the light lights up, so you can make it wider or more direct in terms of the beam, and you can adjust the brightness, which is absolutely perfect for me depending on the time of the day that I'm reading, because right now in Scotland, and I'm sure this goes for a lot of other places too, it's just dark. They say there's sunlight hours, but it doesn't very much feel like it. It just feels dark all the time. My flat has become incredibly dull and dreary, and when I'm reading I really struggle in low light and I find the strain on my eyes. One of the reasons that I have to wear my reading glasses these days when I'm reading most of the time, especially if it's in lower light, because the light from outside or the light from my regular lamps just doesn't cut it, to be perfectly honest. This makes such a difference on my eyes when I'm reading, because it mimics that genuine daylight or midday sunshine that you would get if you were sitting outside in a park, and it's so nice to be able to chill out, sit on my comfy reading chair and have something that makes reading that little bit easier and working. I have a desk lamp version of this which I also use to shine on my keyboard when I'm at work or at my computer, because that ends up a really dark little corner as well. And I've just been thrilled with the quality of this Serious Readers Light ever since I was sent it. I talked about it in the previous video like I mentioned, but I'm more than happy to chat more about it because as the days have gotten darker and the sunlight hours have grown shorter, it has become more and more a part of my life. That is when my flatmate isn't trying to steal it from me. There would have been quite a few struggles over who got to use this lamp if it wasn't for the fact that I had the desk version as well, so we can both have some decent light for reading our books together in the evenings. So naturally I'm more than happy to chat a little bit more about them and to flag them up to those of you who haven't heard about them already or didn't see my previous video where I talked about them or have been debating whether they're the right fit for you, because they are genuinely such a high quality product and they're manufactured in the UK, which is super duper cool. So yeah, they will be linked in the description box down below for you to check them out and maybe experiment with which Serious Readers Light would be the best fit for you, customize all of the different elements. I highly recommend mine. And once again, a massive thank you to Serious Readers for sponsoring this video. Absolutely love them. So yeah, with a final massive thank you to Serious Readers, let's carry on with the reading, shall we? I had sort of started feeling it coming on last night during the sprints. I woke up this morning feeling pretty rubbish, so I actually had the day off work today. I had to cancel the meetings I had arranged, which was a shame, but I was not compos mentis enough to have an articulate conversation with another human being. So I've mainly been sleeping, but I also did manage to finish The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea, so there we go. That's my accomplishment for the day, as well as, you know, healing oneself. I'm just out the shower now, and I feel a little bit like more refreshed, being clean, etc. Taking my lemon sip, so fingers crossed. This is going to be a short-lived cold. My flatmate actually had a cold really recently, which is probably where I picked it up from, and she was sort of ill for maybe only like 2 days, so fingers crossed, same here. But I thought I would share my final thoughts of The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea with you, since I'm just sitting here being a slight slug, but nothing wrong with slugging. So we're going super lo-fi with the webcam camera on my laptop, since I'm feeling very lo-fi. This book is really beautiful. First up, I really enjoyed the setting. I enjoyed the like mashup of like Korean mythology. So although I mentioned before it takes like inspiration from this Korean story about Simchong, it's not a retelling of that story. That's just like a small thread that is woven throughout it. It is more of a story which draws inspiration from lots of different areas of Korean folklore and tradition, and folklore and tradition that actually expands throughout East Asia and creates a whole new story. It's very much its like own new story. And I have read some Korean myth and folklore in the past. I've read a decent chunk of East Asian folklore and mythology in the past, but I'm definitely not familiar enough to say with absolute certainty what is entirely the author's creation and what she has incorporated from existing folklore. So The gods, I don't recognise some of the names of, and I couldn't find them when I googled them, so they may be creations of the author herself, but it works really well. It feels very authentic, like it feels like a mythology, it feels like a mythological tale, it feels like a story that could have been a myth or a folk tale, even though it's actually just one that draws on those themes and creates something new. And I really enjoyed the like thread of discussion around myth and folklore in the book as well, because our main character, Mina, is a storyteller. Her grandmother raised her on myths and folklore and passed down these songs and these stories over the generations from granddaughter to granddaughter. And you hear some of those stories that Mina recalls when she shares them with other characters. And I really love that kind of meta-ness in a story like this, where you get a character showing you the importance of myth and storytelling whilst being a part of a myth and a story. I really like that. My only wish is that this was an adult book, and that's not a criticism of the book, because I'm just an adult who looks for certain things in their fantasy now, and one of those things is a little bit more slow pacing. Like, I really would have loved if this book was longer. It was longer than the 300 odd pages that it is, maybe like 500 pages. It had taken place over a greater span of time, but more than that, there'd been more of the like slower moments. I love in my fantasy those softer, slower moments where not a ton of action is taking place, but you're just getting to see the characters interact with each other and slowly build up their relationships and develop their character, and see a little bit more of the kind of, you know, simplicities of life, the simple aspects of life, not just them in like great battles or great struggles. I like the dotting of that throughout my books, whereas this is like super fast paced, boom, boom, boom. So much is squeezed into this 300 pages. But that is something I find a lot more with YA fantasy. So I think that's just like an age demographic and a sort of convention of young adult that I'm not criticising, but just saying for my personal taste, I would have loved it if it was longer and slower, and there were sort of those softer, slower moments within the story, and maybe not quite as much like action scene after action scene after action scene, because a lot happens, and it feels like you're kind of running the whole time you're reading it. So that would be the only thing I would say I wished for in a reading experience, and that's because I actually really enjoyed the story and the world, so I would have liked a longer version of it, but you know, that's just because I have different tastes in fantasy these days, and that's the kind of thing I'm looking for. Like, I have found in the past few years, and it's not necessarily because of my age, I am less drawn to YA fantasy in general. I still really enjoy a YA fantasy now and then, but generally the pacing isn't to my taste as much as it was a few years ago. So I steer more towards adult fantasy, and when I do pick up YA, I quite like YA thrillers and mysteries, because that pacing I really enjoy in that genre, if that makes sense. But I'll definitely check out more by this author, and I would love more recommendations of books inspired by Korean folklore, so let me know if you have any. And actually I should quickly mention, you know how in my last clip I mentioned this book was very similar to Spirited Away? That was over very quickly. Don't take that comparison to heart, not in a negative way. If you like Spirited Away, you may very well still like this book, but plot-wise, it's nothing like that. That was like a momentary blip, and I had just read that bit, so I was thinking, oh my goodness, it's going to be like Spirited Away. It's not. That was just like that moment in the plot. It passed by. It's very much its own story. I then started a second book. I then actually started my third book of the readathon, which is Savage, Her Reply by Deirdre Sullivan, and this is a retelling of the Irish myth of the children of Lear, and I'm not very far into this, I've only read the first couple of chapters, but I spotted it on my bookshelf and remembered I had it. I didn't put this in my original TBR video because I forgot I had it. I keep all of my myth and fairy tale retellings on the same bookcase, and this had managed to not be on that bookcase. I'd accidentally put it somewhere else, so I forgot I had it. I forgot it was a retelling of mythology, and I saw it when I was walking past the bookshelf and went, Irish myth retelling that I've not read, pick it up. So I have, and I'm looking forward to getting a little bit further into it. It's very beautifully written so far, but other than that I can't say much because I haven't got into the meat of it. There is illustrations though, and stunning. Love an illustration. I mean, there's a lot of beautiful books in this video. So that's my reading update. I'm probably gonna have a really early night tonight, and I'll check in with you again tomorrow. So we have reached the end of the vlog. It's actually a couple of days or 2 days since the readathon technically finished, but as I mentioned in my last clip, I ended up being a little bit ill. I had a cold, thankfully nothing worse than that, but I'm just starting to recover now. I still sound a bit nasally, but I feel so much better, and I am able to film again. You know, like I feel more compos mentis and like I can talk about the final book of the readathon. I technically finished this outside of the span of the readathon. I finished it yesterday, but I'm still going to talk to you about it. Savage, Her Reply by Deirdre Sullivan, which I talked about I think briefly in the previous clip. I'd started it, right? Oh gosh, I think I had. It's a retelling of the Children of Lear, which is a Irish myth or folk tale. It's actually one of those interesting myths from the Celtic and Irish tradition, which sort of crosses the bridge between early pagan beliefs and the rise of Christianity in Celtic countries and Celtic traditions. And you see it a lot actually in Irish folk literature, where there is that blend beginning between the Christian and the pagan traditions. You see it in goddesses and saints like Bridget, and you see it again in the original manuscripts for the Children of Lear as well. But this book is really beautiful. I think it would be perfect for fans of Sister Song. I know a lot of you really enjoyed Sister Song, which is a retelling of the British folk ballad The Twa Sisters. They're both very beautifully written. They both sort of deal with sibling and family dynamics, and they're both quite tragic and forlorn, and this book is quite tragic. It's actually told from the perspective of the character from the original Children of Lear, who would probably be best characterised as the villain, and I thought that was a really interesting perspective to take, and I really enjoyed getting her perspective. She is the second wife of King Lear in this story. She's not his second wife ever, but she's the second of her sisters to marry King Lear, and the foster mother or stepmother of her sister's 4 biological children, who she grows jealous of because she's desperate for Lear's love, but he pays more attention to the children themselves. And it is just quite forlorn and tragic, but it's very beautiful. And in addition to the like beautiful prose, there's these lovely little like introductions to each chapter, which I don't know if I would perhaps describe them as like poems. They're really beautiful, and they're all laid out slightly interestingly like this, with different formatting. I probably should have prepared a favourite one for reading in this video, but this one, for example, reads, "From those you love, it's hard to know how to protect yourself." But yeah, I really think it captures that like fairy tale sense of writing, and kind of the tone of the writing you find in original myths, but it really gives the character and the protagonist a very strong voice. It makes her feel very alive, very complex and very real, and I really enjoyed that. So yeah, I really enjoyed polishing off the readathon with this book. It was nice. I felt like I read a few different things this week. We had a Beauty and the Beast retelling, we had an Irish myth retelling, and we had a book inspired by Korean mythology, all of which I enjoyed in different ways. They were all quite different books, and all by authors who I've either read before or will be continuing to read after this readathon, so that was fantastic. I've also had a ton of new recommendations from all of you on YouTube and Instagram when you've tagged Legendathon in your posts. I've seen a bunch of books that I hadn't heard of before, haven't picked up before, so I cannot wait to read those. But that pretty much wraps up the readathon as well as this vlog, so thank you so much for hanging out with me and for participating if you did, regardless of whether you read them for this readathon or not, though I'd love to hear more recs for myth and folktale retellings from around the world. I'd also love to know if you read anything over the course of the readathon that you really enjoyed or even didn't enjoy. It'd be interesting to hear your thoughts. Once again, a massive thank you to Serious Readers for sponsoring this video. In fact, let me just, you know, like introduce our sponsor to the video. Thank you to Serious Readers for sponsoring this video and for supporting this channel. As you know, I absolutely adore their product, and it will be linked in the description box down below for you to check out. So yeah, that pretty much covers it, and until next time, happy reading. I'll see you all again soon. Bye everyone.